Dr. Jazz.
Listen to the long game quite a lot, and
Yeah.
but my first question will be: so what's happening with you as a band leader, and are you preparing something new? Because that one is like 2019, right? I think, or 20, or
yeah. I mean, well, yeah, it was one of those things, you know, the familiar story. We did the record, and then the tour got pushed back because of availability of people, and then COVID happened, and then some of the gigs came back. So we've only just stopped really doing all the gigs that we were going to do on the tour to launch the record, but 3 years afterwards.
Oh shit! Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but they came back like you know, they came back like they were fired out of a gun, you know, so it's all over the place. So instead of having a tour, it was just like a gig, nothing, a gig. So yeah, but I am working on other things, including hopefully another record with that band. So
oh really? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't formalized anything, but I've got a plan to do it with a young guitarist that I know, who I used to teach at college, but she's really great, and I think she'd be a good fit. And I think guitar would free me up a bit. In that band as a trio, I was doing a lot of things at the same time, and things were liable to go wrong, exactly. But I kind of like the randomness of some of it.
Oh man, I love the record. It's completely it's so funky, but yet weird in a positive way.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
it was strange how it came about, really, because the first gig we did, I was asked to put something together for a short set, like 40 minutes, and Seb and Tom and I had worked together in various things over the years and never played in a band together. And I always wanted to do it. So I thought, okay, let's do that. And it was just piano, upright bass, drums. And then Tom did something to his hand where he couldn't play upright bass. So we did a rehearsal with him playing electric bass, and I really loved it, and it changed the sound of everything. And then I thought, okay, I'll bring in all my keyboard stuff that I've been messing around with for years and not really properly used.
Yeah.
And it just, we did kind of one longish rehearsal, and then we did the studio, 2 days in the studio. And people often say to me, you know, how many overdubs did you do on the recording? And I said, it's no overdubs. It's just me recording things into a looper and stuff coming out. And there are some times where the whole band stops and it's like, what's that noise? Who's making that noise? And I quite like that about it, that it's sort of, in some places it kind of meanders around a bit, you know, and we're just sort of listening and trying to figure out who did what when.
Yeah,
you know.
It's this factor of predictability, you know, sometimes enters.
It's a kind of mixture, because you can't be completely lost, but you can be lost knowing that something good can be made of it, you know. I guess.
No, I love this record because it's, you know, it's different than your previous stuff. So this kind of, you know, like you said, electronic vibes going on, and I mean, you know, all the synths and keyboards, you know, I mean, all these sounds that it's so cool. So
Yeah. Right.
When did you start working with Seb and Tom for the first time? I mean, I know they've been on the scene for such a long time, you know.
I think, yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I played with Seb before Polar Bear started, early 90s.
Wow, okay, that's early. Wow, okay.
Mid 90s. Maybe mid to late 90s. But he was, and I remember me and him and a bass player called Sam Burgess playing with Pete Wareham in a quartet. Pete had a quartet, and it was quite a jazz-based thing and quite complicated music. But Pete was already kind of trying to get into simpler, more sort of direct stuff, closer to pop music. So it was in this weird space where there were lots of complicated chords and funny time signatures, but then lots of quite sort of direct grooves, you know. Yeah. And it was all on piano, so there was no electronics then. So that was the first time I met Seb. And Tom, I mean, I played with him, I think, mainly as an upright bass player, just playing jazz. I mean, I remember doing a workshop when he was still at college. So,
wow, okay, yeah.
But we also played together with, you know, Mark Lockhart.
Yeah, sure, I love him. Yeah,
yeah. So we played together in some of his stuff. He did a Band of Ellington.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then he did an orchestral record, and we were the rhythm section for both of those things, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, all you guys kind of course, it's part of the scene. I mean, it's a big scene in the UK, but still not so big.
Yeah.
So you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So many names keep popping up, you know, and I'm like a really jazz geek, so then I start investigating the scene. I did, you know, all the Basho records and stuff like that, and I was like, man, who are these guys, you know? And your name kept popping up, and I remember I did a tour with Drew and Tom around the time you did that record with them and Phil Robson, Romance Among the Fishes, and I was like, oh yeah, shit, I have to check you out, you know. And I love that record, by the way. I mean, I want to ask.
Yeah, I love that record. Yeah,
it's amazing.
I was absolutely scared stiff when I did that record. I remember the recording session very well. I'm amazed how it came out okay, because I was absolutely bricking it.
How did you decide, actually, since we were speaking about that one, to do that one and the connection with Drew and Tom?
Well, actually, that kind of fell in my lap a bit. The guy that was running Cheltenham Jazz Festival then was a guy called Tony Dudley Evans, who who you may know. Yeah, he's a promoter in Birmingham, and he commissioned me to do something, and he kind of said, who do you want to work with? Get a band together with and get some guests, you know. And I'd been listening to Tim Burns' Science Friction record, and I saw that band at Cheltenham Festival, and I thought, wow, God, Tom Rainey's like my dream drummer, and partly because he's not as famous as like the real big sort of Jack DeJohnette kind of guys, you know, but he's to me he's just as good and got his own thing different to them, and you know, so it was for me it was an ideal thing. It's like, you know, maybe he's available. And Drew I actually didn't know he's playing that well at the time, but I wanted to get somebody that Tom played with a lot. With him working as a rhythm section, and he, you know, as you know, is like incredible.
Yeah.
And I since worked with both of them on different other projects, and it's been sort of nice to do stuff where your kind of playing relationship develops over time, because that record that record, I loved doing it, and but I wrote loads of music, and there was a really funny thing where, of course, I had in my head what I thought people were going to do when they improvised. So I sort of wrote these things, and I thought, oh, Tom, I wanted to write something. I wanted to write music to show that I was kind of serious almost, and I wanted things with kind of complex rhythms, but not too complex that I couldn't play them.
Sure.
And I sort of imagined all these things that he was going to do, these complicated fills and stuff. And there was one tune where there's quite big spaces. It's like a medium tempo thing, and there's quite big spaces between the notes where I envisaged him doing stuff. And there was a point where he just got a brush and went like that. I thought, what's good? And of course, he was like, it was quite a good learning experience for me, that, because I realized after doing that record, and then when I went on to work with him with Ingrid Laubrock, with the trio,
the sleep thief, yeah.
So I realized that he was kind of into a whole load of other freer ways of playing that I didn't know about. So when you book somebody based on things that you've heard, you're not actually hearing the whole person, and it was, quite kind of, I was quite intimidated at first by him, and now I'm not, but it was just like,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I thought, where are we? Where's the one?
Exactly.
But it was a certain kind of energy and I've never really done that since. Those kinds of rhythmic, not complex, but rhythmic counterpoint things. Haven't really done that much since. Because it was a kind of thing. It was a thing for that band.
Yeah.
I mean, all this stuff, I guess you can, like, I'm thinking of writing big band music sometime.
Oh, wow,
even though
fantastic.
basically I hate big bands, but I'm going to conquer it. And something like that might be a good area.
Yeah, to do all this layering and I love that with Tom. I mean, Andrew, it's like when you said where's one, I wrote also for the trio with it, like really complex music, right? And it was maybe something in 11. Okay, I practice. Yeah, it's I feel comfortable. Live gigs, Drew, and it was like a long structure, like for a solo, I don't know, a 17-bar structure in 11.
Yeah.
Man, I think like on half of the gigs, I was like, "Fuck people, I'm," woo, they were just like.
It makes it sound easy, doesn't it? What I like about them is that they play that stuff in a way where you don't realize how complicated it is underneath. Like some people play that stuff and you're made aware of the maths a lot, and it's very even and a bit clinical sometimes because it has to be.
Yeah.
Whereas they're kind of like that, they play it with this sort of 60s, 70s head, I like it, like that sort of rough edge to it.
Yeah, it's not the fusion vibe, in the fusion you would have that 11 and it would be the same more or less groove. Now he's gonna do some triplets or whatever, the drummer, while they play with this almost whatever free jazz, or it's a bad term, but still, you know what I mean, like they're so loose within the form yet still following the form, and it's I love that about those guys. It's just so elastic, incredible. Yeah, so no, I wanted to ask you about the records, and since you mentioned it, I really love that one. Beautiful music and everything, and
thank you.
what you play. But just talking about the long game back, I mean, how did you compose, or how do you compose also for this trio? Do you always play? You said, when you Romance Among the Fishes, you kind of composed music probably thinking of Tom and Drew, like you said. But did you also the music for this trio? Did you know like there's Tom and Seb, because they have their really, especially Seb, I think he has like his style of playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways the same thing happened. Like because I know Tom and Seb playing together with Mark stuff and the Polar Bear stuff, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
And there's a lot of groove element to it. And then with this record, there were a lot of places where it ended up being a lot more abstract than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And Seb, you know, he's a very funny guy to watch playing anyway, because he's quite inscrutable, you know. And then he'll just kind of go like that with a cymbal and stop and like play some other things. And then he can be playing really hard. And it's like his expression's the same, you know. It's quite, so again, it's quite strange getting used to people and how they do things. I mean, I know when I play, from seeing pictures of myself, I always look like I'm having a crap. You know, that's just
Me too.
how I look. That's my stage persona. You know, so I mean, I think with that record, I wanted it to address certain things. Like I wanted it to be groovy, because I felt like, I felt like there was a lot of music around that was really groovy, but I didn't much like it, you know. So I wanted to do something that I wanted to hear, but that had a bit of that groove in it. So some of the tunes, like Rain on My Birthday, I had a specific idea of what that groove would be. And the tune that I do on piano, Pink Mice, I mean, I just sat down and played that. I didn't even really write that. I sat down at the piano and was messing around and practically played the whole thing, and then had to try and remember it and wrote it out. That was the composition process.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's my favorite way of writing.
Is that how you actually compose, or also many times that you improvise and then you listen to what you did, or? Sometimes,
yeah. But there were others, like I sort of set myself challenges as well, like Head Over Heels is quite a long melody, and I deliberately thought, okay, I want to write a long tune, because a lot of my tunes are quite sort of short, stumpy things, you know, that go around 5 bars, and then there's another bit that goes around 3 and then goes back, and that's it, you know. I thought I want to write one long through composed melody. And then I had this sort of vaguely sort of messian sound in my head that I wanted to tap into a bit. And that one, there was a lot more. The initial idea I wrote, I kind of improvised quite quickly, but I did millions and millions of versions of it. You know, it's like trying to pace the melody so the high bit came at the right point, and how do you end it, and how does it go back to the beginning? You know, I tried lots and lots of different things that probably would sound almost the same to most people, but
how did you know when it ends? I mean, how do you know when you end a tune, actually? I sometimes have problems with that.
Yeah, I have problems. I mean, I have problems. I have kind of like premature ending problems, I would say. Like, you know, man of my age is bound to have premature ending problems, but so, like, you know, I start a tune and it's like 5 bars later, I think, okay, yeah, that's enough. And it's like, oh no, wait a minute, come on. Only 5 bars, nothing's happened. It's like in C major, you had a couple of funny chords and you're back in C major again. That's not, where's the arc sort of thing. Yeah, so that was one of those tunes where I kind of made myself, I put bars in 2 pages of manuscript paper and said, right, okay, get to there somehow, you know.
Yeah, That's a good one.
In a way, that's my favorite tune because it was the most work. You know.
I like that one, Unmemorized Man. With those strange accents happening there, and you know what's going on, and I'm like, there, what? I love that.
I mean,
so cool.
That's another one. I just play the recording at the beginning. There's like a sort of muffled recording of piano with a silencer pedal on it, done on my phone, and that was basically me doing what you said. You know, just playing and recording stuff. And that was it. I just played that section, improvised it, you know, and then afterwards I thought, okay, that's kind of a tune, but what is it, you know? And then when I tried to notate it, it's like it's sort of in time, but it doesn't really fit the time signature, you know. And then it was quite fun when we recorded it. We got into this thing where we started playing it in time from the notation, and we were all a bit like, oh shit, you know, how do we do this? It's like, and there were a few gaps where, and Seb, who's brilliant at this kind of thing, he just kind of does this drum fill, and it's like, I know exactly where we have to come back in, because the bar was a pause bar, but we were playing time through it. So what happened? How much time is there in a pause bar, you know?
Yeah.
And but so there was a lot. It was very precarious the way we did that record, but I like the way it came out. You know, it's. And I also. Yeah,
no,
sorry.
Go on. I wanted to ask you, like, when you played live this music, how much did it change actually?
Quite a lot, I think. It just got more. It got a lot freer, you know. Things went in a lot more different directions. Tom brought a load more effects pedals.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay. That's
yeah.
Wow.
So sometimes we're playing and then we just find ourselves in this massive sort of cosmic echoey space. It's like, how did we get here from that, you know? It's quite fun. I mean, it's yeah, and people seem to like the fact that we don't seem to know what we're doing quite on the gig, you know, that they like the fact that they seem to be following us into a mysterious kind of terrain, you know.
Yeah.
So it has evolved. That's why I wanted to do another record, is because now I sort of know what we can do, you know. It would be nice. It would be nice to do a record knowing what the band is, you know.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, really cool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking. Did you record some of the live gigs, maybe, or?
Yeah, there's a few things on YouTube. There's one gig we did in Birmingham to no audience, which is on a thing called B Jazz, I think. B Jazz, yeah, and we basically played in Birmingham Symphony Hall, which is a massive room, and the lighting and the filming quality is great.
Check it out.
Yeah, but to no people, it was very strange doing it. But again, I kind of liked it, how it came out.
Yeah.
I think there's another gig we did at Seven Arts in Leeds, which is 2 sets. And that's in a sort of smallish.
Okay.
Probably closer to a typical live gig.
That's super. I'll check it out. Really curious how it sounds. I mean, the record sounds so beautiful. So with this music, I thought, you know, you probably live really went to explore things and different ways. So that's nice. But where does this? You know, on this record, where does this love for this funky vibe come from you? I read somewhere a description of you, which was like, you're a mix of Steve Coleman meets Paul Bley or something, like, I don't know what it was.
Yeah. Wow,
Django
that's
Bates with Wayne Shorter, like, mix. I was like, yeah, actually, that's a good description. Like, where do all these influences which you come from? I mean, what got you excited, let's say in the 80s, I guess, mid 80s, for jazz, or what was the moment?
Oh, there was so much stuff around. I mean, I often look back and try and figure out how I got from being, I started off being really into stride piano.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I could never do it, but I loved, you know, Fats Waller and Earl Hines. And then I got really into Ellington. I think Ellington was the thing where I sort of realized, okay, that's how improvisation can open out when you leave space and you sort of play and you make things happen around you, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the 80s, I used to do things like I used to read the Wire magazine and just buy albums based on interviews, like, you know, like, oh, they sound interesting, I'll buy the record, you know. And because you buy stuff, you listen to it more.
Yeah.
You know, so I
definitely
remember buying that Power Tools record with Bill Frisell, Ronald Shannon Jackson. I mean, that record had a big effect on me because it didn't sound like jazz, but it was improvising.
Yeah.
And but it sounded like rock, you know, and the sound of the kit and everything was.
That's a weird record.
Yeah.
In a good sense, I mean.
Yeah, it stayed in my mind a bit, even doing this long game record. You know, there's something about that kind of bass playing as well that's sort of, you know, it's like he could be playing in The Cure or something like that, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there are lots of things like that I got into, you know, Frisell and Tim Byrne and all the downtown, whatever you call it, scene. I don't know if people still use that expression.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I also loved, there was one album I really loved, which was Ornette Coleman, Virgin Beauty.
Oh yeah.
For me, that's like classic sort of weird groove thing with a really open sort of mad aspect to it, you know. So all of those things. I mean, Steve Coleman as well. Yeah, in the 80s, I really got into Sign Die and those early-ish records.
Yeah.
Again, he sort of now. I always felt he was in a place that I couldn't get to. You know, I knew that he was like functioning on a kind of higher level that I would never get to because I basically like things to be messy, you know. So that sort of cleanness, you know, I kind of admire it and I like listening to it. But actually, when I discovered Henry Threadgill, I thought,
oh man, that's my hero.
Coleman. Yeah, he's like Steve Coleman with a whole load of other stuff mixed in, you know.
Yeah, for me also Threadgill is like, you know, when I did these interviews, I interviewed many guys who played with Henry.
Yeah.
Just you know, I tried to make lead sheets of his music, and of course he has these other systems, and my lead sheets probably of his music look like nothing that.
Yeah.
His vision of music is.
I've got a few bits of manuscript with stuff sketched out from those very, very circus records.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah.
What is that? You know.
Exactly. And then
there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of humor in his music. He's a bit less in Steve Coleman's somehow, for me, you know.
Oh, definitely. I don't hear the humor in Steve's playing. I mean, it's but Henry definitely, yeah. It's like he's really like messing with forms and stuff. But it's interesting when Liberty Allman told me, you know, how his structures work, and how his lead sheets look like. I was like, man, really? I didn't know that. You know, I just wrote out some forms. Yeah, this is 19 and this is playing this, and like, but
and he's got stacks of like 3 chords, hasn't he, or
yeah,
something?
yeah, that you need like
one over another one.
Yeah, and you can operate only with certain intervals and stuff like that, and I love that. I never thought of that, so
yeah,
quite cool. So yeah, I mean, he's one of my heroes, definitely. So
yeah.
So, but you know, I listen. I checked your discography, and I have some albums of you. But your first album. But first, I want to ask you, how was your start getting integrated in the UK jazz scene? I know you did quite a lot with Stan Sulzmann, and you know, I love Stan. He's like, for me, one of the most underrated saxophone players, not only in the UK. I mean, not UK, he's known, but like, you know, wider.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you start working with him and like your steps into the scene? I mean,
well, he actually, I was at the Guildhall doing the sort of postgrad jazz course there in 1991. So it was kind of the only jazz course around. There was one in Leeds, I think. But I went straight into this course for a year, and I had John Taylor as a teacher for a few lessons, which was amazing.
Oh, really? Oh man, I love John Taylor. Wow, how was that like?
Experience. Well, he was just like, I mean, he didn't teach me anything, as in he didn't sit down and say, "Oh, you should do this, you should do this." He sort of, we ended up talking a lot about what he was working on, you know, like he was playing Hindemith and stuff like that. And he said one lesson, I never knew what to ask him, and he never knew what to teach me, really. We just sort of sat around and I said, "Oh, what could you play me something that you're working on?" So he sat down at the piano and he said, "Yeah, I've got this thing, but it's all a bit jumbled up, really. I don't know what order to do it in, but I'll play you what I've got." And he played that tune, Pure and Simple. You know that tune?
That's which record is that?
It's on Blue Glass, I think, the live at Ronnie's.
Oh shit, I don't have that one. I don't have that one.
Oh, it's quite hard to get, but it's brilliant. It's with Mick Hutton, who's an amazing bass player, and Steve Arguelles.
Really? Oh, okay, I have to find it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you may be able to get it on CD somewhere, but I don't think you can stream it. It might be on YouTube or.
Okay, I have to get it.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he just played this whole tune as it was, as it still is. I think I think he also does it on one of those Pete Erskine trio.
Oh yeah, I have those. Yeah.
It's on there somewhere. Pure and
Simple. Okay, I'll check it out. Okay.
And I just thought, bloody hell, what is that? You know, like I couldn't fathom it. How does it fit together? And then a month or two ago, I did a gig with the Royal Academy Big Band, and they were doing a load of John Taylor's big band music that had been sort of undiscovered until recently.
Oh.
And they did Pure and Simple. And Nick, my mate Nick Smart, who runs the course there, he was conducting it like this. And I thought, oh, that's what it is. It's all it's all triplets. But the way he played it, it was so stop-starty that you couldn't hear the time. It just felt like a kind of
rubato viper.
Yeah. But so he recommended me to Stan.
Oh,
so that's how I got to meet Stan, and then Stan played in my band a bit later on. Yeah.
I've read that you played with Kenny also, Wheeler. Was that also true?
Yeah.
Stan, what was that? Because there's no record, right? Or is there? Or maybe
no, there's no recording. You know, I played with Kenny a few times with Stan Sulzmann live, just in various quintets. Then I did this trio with a guy, Andrea Di Biase,
Oh, don't know.
Who's the Italian bass player who lives in London. And it was basically, Kenny lived round the corner from me in Leytonstone in London. And he was quite ill. It was when he was starting to get quite ill.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't really gigging at the time, but then we would just sort of get together and play, you know. And there were occasions where he really couldn't. I was really worried about him, you know, that he you know, he was clearly unwell. And then he'd have periods where we would get back together. Like the first tune of the day was always like a bit dodgy, and then the second he'd suddenly kind of get it. It would all come back, you know. And so Andrea, I think, approached him, and he said that he'd been playing with me. So we ended up doing this trio for a bit. And
oh, really?
There's a thing on YouTube. I think there's a gig on YouTube.
Oh shit! I have to check it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, it's quite strange because I can tell listening to it that Kenny's not quite, you know, he's starting to kind of deteriorate health-wise a bit.
Yeah.
Of course, there are moments brilliant on there. But
yeah. Oh, he was so good. I mean, you know, like the compositions and everything. So
yeah,
it's such a player, really. And the sound, you know, one of those guys who plays two notes and you're like, oh, Kenny Wheeler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's so rare, you know.
Down there and one note up there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But you know, your first record is a solo piano record.
Yeah.
And, how did you decide to do that, actually? I mean, and also the repertoire is quite interesting. Like
yeah, it was money, basically.
Okay.
I mean, whenever it was I did it, 1993 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd just come out of college a couple of years before, and you know, I was kind of playing on the scene, playing mostly standard type gigs, and which I love doing, you know, still love doing. And I just kind of felt like, you know, I was listening to all this other stuff. Like I was really into Frizzell and Bobby Previtt and Wayne Horvitz, and
I love that stuff. Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I need to do something. I need to sort of do a thing, but I've got no money, you know. So like, I basically booked a studio for 4 hours.
Oh wow! Okay.
And that's the best of it. I don't know what else. Actually, it'd be interesting to go back, find the tapes of those sessions. I've got them somewhere.
Because
see what else was on there. Because
it sounds beautiful. I mean, it's cool. Like, but also the later, if you compare, I mean, you did a lot of solo piano stuff. So later, how do you see yourself as evolving as a solo piano player?
Don't know. I definitely haven't got any better. But I think I've got more resourceful, I suppose. Like my imagination is probably, once I get down to doing something, you know, I think my imagination works better, and I think I'm more relaxed because I know how to get out of more difficult situations. I mean, I sort of often tell students that, you know, I say, look, getting better at improvising is as much to do with being able to escape from anywhere you find yourself. And if you can do that, then you don't have any fear of playing anymore. And if you play without any fear, then it's going to come across. That's how you sound like all the people you love, is to play without fear, really, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so heavy sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, I still get it. I still get the fear, but I get it less. than I did, you know. But I mean, you know, I haven't done any actual proper piano practice for years, you know, like I sort of play, I do gigs and I think, and that's my practice, you know, and also teaching is my practice as a bit, because you know, you're having to think about what you do, and you sort of say to students, okay, let's try playing a blues with just these arpeggios, and then you think, oh, actually there's quite a lot of stuff that you can do with this that I ignore because my head's in some complicated thing. You can, you know, there's loads of room here to just stay where. So it's good for thinking about what you do all the time, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Teaching is a nice way to do these things. Just for me, it's the same. Sometimes play a simple chord like a triad, and then like, oh, wait a second. If I do that and I do that and I add this, like the student is playing like a normal pentatonic scale, and then you see me there like, oh, what?
yeah.
Zooming out on some like, oh, wait a second, what is this? Like, no, I love that.
Yeah.
Liam, I wanted to ask you also about your connection with Paul Dunmore, and I love the trio with, you know, John Edwards and Mark Sanders. It's like those, I mean, the quartet you did. This is such incredible records. How did you start playing with him, and the connection there?
Do you know what? I think the way it came about is that Paul was really into Julian Siegel's music, which is weird. In a way, is quite strange. I mean, I can see the sort of mutual respect as instrumentalists. You know, like Julian's an amazing tenor player, Paul's an amazing tenor player, but Julian's music is quite tightly organized.
Different aesthetics.
It has madness in it. I mean, it's, you know, the people in it all have a bit of madness in their playing as well. But I think Paul wanted to get me because he heard me on those records. And it really just was one of those things. The first time we played was like, oh, this is great. Something about the balance of like, because I think Paul, for somebody on that scene, Paul has quite a lot of jazz sound in his playing. You know, he overlaps into some of the sound-based things as well. And I think I'm probably more in the jazz camp than the free camp in some ways. And then John Edwards is kind of more in the sound, and, you know, and Mark is kind of, so we're all like, it feels like there's a good balance of different ways it can go, you know. Because I quite like, in the middle of those things, I quite like playing chords and like working things out, you know. It seems like I can get away with it, you know.
No, I love that, man, because, you know, I think Paul started his career when we spoke, like, as playing, I think, with a blues guy in the States, like in the 70s or something like that.
Yeah, was it Johnny Guitar Watson or something?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you hear that in his sound. And Mark, I think he plays like in a dub band, right? Also, or and you know, it's all these influences you guys have, and then you blend that into this kind of free whatever music, you know. It's, I mean, it's hard to describe. I love that band, and you know, it's what you do also within that context. It's nice to hear, so it's quite cool.
Right, thank you. I mean, we just did a gig that I think is going to come out as a recording, and that'll be 4 albums that band's done, which is more albums than I've ever done with any one band ever, I think. Over however many years, and this is over about 4 or 5 years, you know. It's great that Paul likes to document stuff and put it out. It's brilliant, you know.
Yeah, 200 records or something like that.
Yeah, incredible. Incredible.
Just documenting what he does. I mean, it's a nice thing, actually. It's especially nowadays, because you know, what is a record or an album in this era, you know, with the existence or non-existence of labels, if I put it like that. Or
I mean, I just recorded something to put out, and I don't know what to do with it. I'm still thinking about whether to approach a record company or to do it on CD myself, or CDRs, which people have talked about, you know.
Yeah.
Or to just put it on Bandcamp. I mean, I did do that with one live album, and it sort of disappears. People don't know that it's there.
Yeah.
It's hard to get people to listen to things just digitally, I think. Well, in my experience, it is. But maybe...
No, that's an important question. How do you get, you know, you put it there, and how do you get people then to listen to it, or not even to how do they, you know, even realize that there's a record out, unless they're your kind of followers or whatever. But like, that's the hard thing. So many albums out there, and of course, it's hard to get in these journals or magazines or whatever, unless you pay an ad, or you know, it's
exactly.
So
it's quite sort of corrupt, isn't it? I mean, they've got to live as well, but
sure,
it's a shame there's no framework where you can get an even-handed and visible appraisal of what you do, you know. Because there's a ton of people who are writing about music for nothing and putting it on the internet, and that's great. And a lot of them are pretty good writers, but a lot of them are pretty terrible writers. So, you know, it's just like a sea of stuff, you know.
It's terrible. It's just like, especially in this music that we do, like this creative modern jazz, or I don't know the term, but you know what I mean. It's not straight ahead jazz, or and it's so hard to get, you know, the visibility that when I look at the artists I interview, or like I have albums, you know, I'm like, shit, man, these people should be like, you know, way more known as composers and as musicians, but they are in a sense with, you know, within the jazz community of musicians even, or some bands, but it's impossible to get it even wider just because of this, like you said, kind of corrupt, and not corrupt, but you know, it's so hard. You see, like in Downbeat, a review of an album, and like 2 pages before, like an ad for that album. So it's like, okay, that's how it works, you know. So
I mean, also the social media thing, which I quite enjoy doing, you know, up to a point, but it seems like the only way to get to people is to have them as followers, and you sort of define your world by how many followers you've got.
Which is
I can't sort of keep up with it all, and I can't give people content often enough for them to want to follow me, you know. It's like,
I know what you mean.
I mean, it used to be Jesus had followers. That's what followers were, not like, you know, 12 was enough, you know.
Now, 12 is not really. Exactly. No, it's bizarre. It's true. I agree. I don't know. I'm sometimes puzzled when I make an album, and then it's like, you know, do I have the energy to promote it? You know, how to do it? You know, like to send it around, and then, you know, I don't have the will or the money to pay someone like a huge amount of money to promote it, and it doesn't make sense. So it's like this vicious circle. Bizarre.
It's tough. I mean, like this latest album that I'm doing now was basically, the motivation for doing it was kind of the opposite for the motivation for doing the Long Game one, which was like, I've been doing this summer school for about 20 years, maybe even longer. And there's a guy, an alto player called Jeff Simpkins, who lives in Brighton. I don't know if you know.
No.
A lot of people don't know him mainly because he's not in London.
Yeah.
He's a kind of amazing improviser. I mean, he's a kind of standards. I've only ever heard him play really straight ahead standards, but I'm quite fussy about who I play standards with. You know, I don't really want to do it with most people because they're not into it, and it's fair enough. Why should they be? But he's totally in it, you know, and we always end up playing in the evenings on the summer school, you know, and every year we were like, oh, let's do a gig. Oh, you know, nothing happens. Okay, this time I'm gonna get a gig and I'm gonna record it. Then we'll get paid for the gig. Some of that money we can use to pay the guy that recorded it, and then, you know, what's the cheapest way to actually get it out? But I need to do CDs because there's quite a few people that will buy that record who like CDs of that age group, you know.
Yeah.
But it was just like the pleasure of playing that music and knowing that there's somebody around that I still like playing that music with was the motivation to do it. But it's kind of, you know, we play Stella by Starlight and all these kind of tunes, but I always found, like, when I was at college, all my favorite bands were kind of people that had done other stuff that were coming back to a standard format, like the Schofield Lovano thing with Time on My Hands. When that came out, I was like,
oh man, yeah,
such a refreshing sound. And then Motion on Broadway, that stuff, and the Jarrett Trio when he was playing standards, the early days of that trio, which were my favorite.
Yeah.
It was all people that were kind of coming back to playing standards after having done free stuff or writing their own music, or so I kind of wanted to do that a bit, you know, in the cheapest way possible.
yeah, sure. But that's what you're working now on? I mean, that's coming out in the future?
It will come out sometime in the future. I'm just at the end of this week, I'm just going to mix everything and get all the tracks in order and stuff. And
fantastic.
I'm still thinking about what to do with it, but I think there'll be physical CDs. I can't face just putting it online, really.
Yeah, for gigs at least that you have it. I mean, that's nice. It's
yeah.
It's yeah, but I don't know what you know. I had a tour in October now, like a 2-week tour in Europe, and mostly people who bought CDs were above 50, which which in a way is also scary, you know, because like, okay, once this generation becomes 50, they will not have CD players, or from their fathers, maybe. I hope, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because my daughter is a singer and she's at music college at the moment, and she I got a message from her one day saying have you got an old CD player that I can have?
Oh wow, like, okay.
What's that for? She said, yeah, I don't like the way I listen to music, you know, because she's studying as well. It's like, I think, you know, I wonder if people of that age, when they're studying music, they still have to do what we used to do. You know, it's like you get something and then you play the hell out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
To try and figure out what's going on, or just simply because you like it.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe I always kind of thought, I don't know how people can learn without that. That seems to be the main thing, you know.
Yeah.
And I've seen that with a couple of other students that I've taught, people that have got off social media that just listen to, I mean, there's the vinyl thing, which I don't know if that's a bit faddy or what, but
yeah, I don't know.
Certainly, I went back to listening to, I dug out all my old vinyl that I'd put in a box and got a new record player and stuff, and I haven't used it that much, partly because I've got a 3-year-old who just will trash everything. But when I've put vinyl on, it is different. It is different, even to listening to stuff on the stereo through the phone. It's like you put something on and you walk over and you sit on the sofa, and in 20 minutes or whatever, you've got to turn it over. It frames it in a different way.
More focused also on the music, actually. And
yeah. And I like old secondhand knackered records with crackles on, because that's like somehow a texture. It's like it feels more real to me.
And someone had it, and played it, and
it's pretty fucked up. It's probably some weird psychological kind of Freudian reason why I need to get that.
Like listening to Miles and like Autumn Leaves, and oh yeah, I love that, man. Oh shit.
I had an Ellington in 1940 record, the Jimmy Blanton stuff, and there was a track, Dusk I think it is, which is like a sort of Mood Indigo-ish sort of track, and the album that I had a skip in it, but I didn't know, and I used to think, wow, that's so amazing that he just puts a 5/8 bar in the middle of that progression. And now I can't hear it with the proper thing in it. It's so tame. It's like it just needs something else. I feel like it needs like a jolt to happen there,
That's a cool one, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing that if something's at least returned, because that represents the idea of an album. And with all the streaming platforms, I think that's gone. I don't think people take time to listen to 60 minutes of music, and if you have a CD or a vinyl, you spend actually money for it, and then you did it or do it. So that's the difference. Also the money, value for money thing. And so well, we'll see. I'm positive we're doing what we like, so that's important.
yeah, exactly. It's just surviving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you're not going to get any more famous than you are, it's just keep doing it and survive.
And if you still like it, that's important, I think. So
yeah.
So, cool, Liam. I'll let you be slowly. Let you go on with your day. So
Yeah, thanks.
And